Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Empower You. I'm your host, Janet Hickox, and I also have my co-host, Roger Wetzel, here with me today. Hello, Roger.
Hi, Janet. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, on this bright, sunshiny day in the northwest corner of Washington State. And with us today is our guest, Susan Powell. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Janet. Hi, Roger.
Hey, Susan.
I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, you know, and Roger, we've been working on the concepts of healing, alternative forms of healing, holistic healing. That has been our theme for the entire month of March. And Susan has come to us. I don't know, Roger, you met Susan somehow and then found out she was an extraordinary healer and, in fact, a holistic health educator. I loved that. I'm really intrigued by that. So I want to get into talking about that a little bit. But let me tell folks a little bit about you, Susan. Susan, I don't want to leave this. Hold on. Sorry. That was a mess. Susan Powell is a holistic health educator, medicine wheel guide, and access consciousness bars and body process facilitator with a deep interest and a background in exploring techniques for effecting positive change in her own and her clients' sense of wellness. From a variety of bodywork therapies to holotropic breathwork, from Native American ceremonies to access consciousness, and from theater for living, work to rediscovery. For over 30 years, she has investigated numerous modalities and traditions of healing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Susan. And I'm just going to start by letting you have a chance to tell us about who you are and how you came to be interested in the holistic healing field.
Well, thank you for introducing me and for inviting me, both of you. It's a pleasure to be here. And let's see, it's kind of a long story, but I'll keep it short. I arrived on the planet like the rest of us, and it's kind of like you get whacked upside the head and a little jumbled a bit, and even kind of forget who you are and who you came here to be, and then slowly coming around to, oh, this is how people live here, and inside myself, I knew that I always knew something else was possible. And probably like many of your viewers and followers, I too went through a pretty bumpy time in my childhood, and it wasn't all awful, but there were a lot of pretty yucky things that happened. And I had a sense that there was something wrong with me and that I needed fixing and I needed help and I needed to change and all of that sort of thing. And so I got busy just looking into other possibilities. And when I was about 10 or so, my aunt, I was living with my dad's mother, my grandmother, and my aunt came home from work one day and said, "Can you rub my shoulders?" And I just fell in love with massaging her shoulders. And I walked on her back, and I just felt like I was doing something cool, and it felt good. My body loves to touch other bodies, and it loves to be touched. And so it was it was a safe place, after going through certain abuses and things, it was a safe place to experience touch. So that got me going, and I kept going on with that through my teenage years. And then my grandmother wanted me to become a Catholic so I could go to Catholic school because she felt that was the best kind of education. So there I was. And the other thing about me, you can probably tell that I'm not all of European background. My mother was Oglala Lakota. And so I look and present very native, but I was being raised by the white side of my family in Virginia as a Southern white Roman Catholic. So it was kind of a strange place to be, but I just girded my loins and went forward as best I could. And so while there were some really lovely teachings within the church framework, there were a lot of things that inside my little being was going, I don't think so. I think somebody made a mistake here. So I was 14 years old, and my aunt and my grandmother used to have these kind of slightly intense conversations around. My grandmother was just so wanted us to be good Christians, and my aunt had already branched out on her own. She was 12 years older than me, and they made a bet or an agreement that my aunt would reread the Bible if my grandmother would read Autobiography of a Yogi. So
That's a great one.
Isn't that great? You know,
Yeah.
so as soon as she was done with it, I read it, and it was the first book that I ever read way back then that I just thought, wow, this is more the energy of what I'm interested in. And he even talked about another way of looking at the teachings of Jesus that just felt so much more in alignment with me. So that, along with being so interested in anything that might be possible, so from astrology to tarot and macrobiotic eating and health foods things and all of that, I eventually made my way to looking into massage therapy school. And took me a while, but I found a place. It was called Heartwood College in Santa Cruz, and then later Garberville, California. And they had a training program.
I've been there. I've been to Garberville. Oh my gosh.
It's gorgeous.
I stayed there. It's beautiful there.
So idyllic. And
yeah.
And so the one of the heads of the school, Bruce Berger, his idea was to introduce us to all things holistic, to kind of give us a smorgasbord so that we could then decide, choose for ourselves what would be our main focus. And so we learned herbology and diet and nutrition and yoga and anatomy and physiology and polarity and massage. And we started every class with a song and ended every class with a song. And it just really fit with me and where I wanted to go. And so and then another thing that helped get me through, other things that helped get me through my early years was nature and going out to be with nature. I felt every day amongst people that it seemed like, and certainly back then, I don't know how it was for you guys growing up, but it seemed like adults were always looking to see what I had done wrong. Or in the South, they say what you're fixing to do. So I was fixing to get into trouble, or I'd already been into trouble. And it was just, but when I was in nature, I felt peaceful, and nature wasn't looking at my wrongness. Nature was just accepting me and reflecting beauty back to me. So I felt peaceful there. And I got into classical Russian ballet. And my interesting point of view is that ballet actually helped save my life and get me through my teenage years, because I was in a ballet company and I was in the ballet studio every day for hours and plus rehearsals. And so I couldn't get too involved in killing myself with drugs and alcohol. So, ballet was really great that way. And
few ledges for you to jump off into.
Oh my goodness. It's a different kind of, just jump into somebody's arms and be lifted into the sky. That was a different.
Are you living in Northern California at this point in time, or were you still in Virginia?
I was still in Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was in a ballet company when I was in high school.
Nice.
Yeah. Very nice. And so then I went to California, via Colorado and all sorts of other adventures. I've moved around a lot. And so so I was living in Florida at one point, and this fellow with whom I was acquainted, but I didn't really know him.
Mm-hmm.
You know how there's critters on the planet that are wild. We call them wild, and they live not in a domesticated way. And many people that I met were domesticated. And this man was not a domesticated man. He, in terms of his energy, he wasn't like, some kind of walking around with leaves in his hair or something, but he just is energetically, he was different. Yeah. And I always felt a little nervous around him, because I was raised to be a good girl and just kind of stay within certain parameters of how to be. And he showed up at my doorstep one day, and I was like, wow, how did he find out where I lived? But I invited him in, and he had two gifts to give me and some words. And one was a beautiful kind of Navajo style necklace with lots of big chunky turquoise and silver on it. And this book about that, it had phrases about the medicine wheel in it. And he said, I just think this might be cool for you to check out. And then he left. And so as soon as I read the words medicine wheel, something inside me, after looking at, Christianity and Pentecostalism and, Hinduism and Buddhism and Taoism and all these things, and they all had good things for me. When I saw the medicine wheel, something inside me, it was like a little, dowser, it just went, yes, that. And it took me 3 years from then, and really about 3,000 miles, to find the woman who became my medicine teacher. Her name is Mahogany, and in English, Evelyn Eaton, and she's since passed on. But as soon as I met her, I just fell in love with this beautiful, beautiful elder, and I just followed her around and spent time with her. And when she had a catastrophic health issue and was hospitalized, it was in the area where I actually lived, so I could just kind of show up and be there. And when they finally were able to take her home, I got a call about a month later saying, it's so intense. We're asking a few people if they'd be willing to come and assist. And I just said, I'll be there in 2 weeks. They're like, no, think about it. I said, I've thought about it. I'll be there in 2 weeks. And so I was able to be part of the team that assisted her in being comfortable before she made her final journey. And so that's kind of the long and the short of it. And then I've continued over the years just to look for modalities that help me, and so, it's great if it helped you, but if it didn't do anything for me, I can say, well, it worked on Janet, so maybe you want to check it out, but I can't really say for sure. From my own experience. And one of the things I noticed, you guys, is that over the years, there was this whole thing about healing takes a long time. And you really have to work at it and slog through it and all this stuff for a long time. That was the model forever. But, in the last 10 or so years, it's really gotten to how quickly change can actually happen.
Right.
And then there's the awareness that there's actually never been anything wrong with us, but that we ended up buying all these lies that there was something wrong. And so it's just been about reconnecting with who we truly are. And so the medicine wheel continues to be a really beautiful, it's an assistant on your journey. It's a map. It's a ceremony. It's all kinds of things. It's a reminder, and a way of reflecting back to yourself about yourself. And I've just witnessed over all these 30 odd years, all the profound changes that people have experienced with it. And then some people, kind of go into the spiritual materialism end of things and make it be really significant, and we're doing this ceremony, and and how special am I? I'm in the ceremony, and I did that too, but once you kind of get over that,
I did that one time.
Yeah, just once though.
For a moment. It was only a moment.
Just a moment, and then I got slapped upside my head. No, but harden up. But there's this thing where we just get to this point, I guess ultimately, as long as you don't give up, you're going to get where you would like to go. And like that, who is it? E.E. Cummings had that wonderful poem about you'll finally, you'll arrive to where you were and finally recognize that place. You'll see it for the first time, and I'm butchering the whole thing, but that concept that, we're on this adventure, and it's always, like Dorothy,
she was
always at home, and so, yeah, we
wasn't
are.
in Kansas?
Yeah.
Well, it could have been,
Let's go to Kansas.
wherever, home is for you. And so, yeah. And I guess that's just to wrap up is, just, that right where we are, and I'm putting my hand on my heart, it's just that this little body that we have is our home base for while we're here on the planet, and that we can be friends with our body, and we can be friends with ourselves, and that from that space of being in that friendship with ourselves, and recognizing the oneness of all of us. Because we talk, about our body and our emotions and our mind as if it's all separate, but it's
Right.
all unified. And that when we're really in that space of us, then everything is possible, and we can really connect with each other in the way that we all so long for that.
Yeah.
It's one of the most basic and primal requirements to feeling good here.
Yeah. Tell us about the medicine wheel. What was it that really drew you into that? And then what did you learn about yourself through that whole process? Because, I mean, I've heard of a medicine wheel. I've seen a picture of a medicine wheel, but I really have no clue what does that mean, in terms of a healing tool or, anything like that.
Or what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing is just the words themselves and seeing that picture of the circle.
Yeah.
And the wholeness of the circle and it just, I couldn't even tell you in the moment that I read it exactly what it was. But as I've gone along and learned about it, ironically, like I mentioned earlier, that my mom was Lakota, and the Lakota are one of the nations of people that have the medicine wheel as a really important part of the culture.
Mm-hmm. I
was never connected at all with my Lakota relatives, and I still haven't found them to this day. But there's something, our being just knows something, and it was like I knew that this was my thing. And I've also learned that the Cree people and the Anishinaabe people, or they would say Ojibwe down in the States, or Chippewa, are connected with the medicine wheel, and each nation has their own teachings about it. But
Mm-hmm.
interestingly enough, there's no phrase in any of the nations that I've connected with that has the phrase medicine wheel. And if you think about it, we didn't have wheels; we had circles.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we called it, like the translation was a hoop, the sacred hoop in Lakota. But when, you can imagine these, European stock people coming across this great big circular thing out in the middle of nowhere, or what they would call nowhere, and go, look, it's a wheel, because it had spokes in it and all of that. And then, and they talk about medicine, medicine this and medicine that. So we'll call it a medicine wheel. So, kind of makes sense. But, and so there's lots of different teachings, and I personally do not teach any culturally specific information about the medicine wheel, because that's really best left to the elders of all of those various nations. And each person whom I've ever heard teach about it, even if they're from the same nation, they always teach something a little bit different. But there's some basic principles, and those principles. And I've had the great pleasure and blessing of being able to travel throughout, what we call Indian country, or Turtle Island, Indian country and Turtle Island. So a lot up in Canada with the Aboriginal and First Nations and even the Inuit people. But all of the principles are similar, of respect and gratitude and working together for the common good and self-respect, all of those kinds of things. And so it's like a mnemonic, the medicine wheel can be, and it represents so many things. And so there's all of that. But for me, when I think about it, in relation to, because I spent 12 years immersed in Catholicism, it's a very hierarchical system. You've kind of got God, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit up at the top, and then you've got the saints or the apostles, Jesus's posse, and then in Mary, Joseph,
I love it.
And then, and then you've got like the archangels and the angels, and then the little cherubim and seraphim all floating around and doing their cute thing. And then you've got the really, really high saints who did lots of miracles, and then you've got the medium saints who did a few, and then you've got the three who only did their requisite, or the ones who only did their requisite three. And then you've got the really, really good people who were good but weren't good enough to be saints. Then you've got the medium good people, and then you've got the good people, and then you've got the people who are in heaven only because we prayed it hard enough for them to get them out of purgatory, so they made it in. And then you come to the earth, and you've got the Pope, and then you've got the College of Cardinals who vote the Pope in, and then you've got the archbishops, and you see what I mean? It's like that.
You've done too much. You've thought about this way too much.
Yeah.
No, but it's like that. And you look
That's
at the
true,
world. It's like,
Yeah.
it's out there. And then you look at the medicine wheel and there's this circle. And my teacher talked about how the point at the center represents the creator or the everywhere spirit or all that is, or whatever you want to say. And if it's a perfect circle, then every point on the circumference of that circle is going to be equidistant, the same distance to the center. And to me, that's just, it's like, oh, you mean the Pope's just as close to the center as I am.
Not any closer to God than anybody else is.
And than anybody else. And I don't have to go through the Pope to get to the Creator or through anybody else. It's each of us have this direct connection. And so my teacher taught us how to sit. We would sit on the desert floor. We'd make the medicine wheel, and then we'd sit around it, and we would journey to the center. And so nowadays people would call that shamanic journeying, and you go from where your stone is straight in, and then she would guide us through particular journeys that we would do. And it was wonderful, and it was profound. And then after a little while, she looked at me one day and she said, well, it's so good that you're feeling better using all of these things I've been teaching you. And I said, yes, I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much. And she said, and so now that you know about it, now it's your turn to share it with other people. And I'm like, oh, no. I mean, you guys, you're hearing me speak more right now than you would have heard me speak in a month. Like, I did not talk in front of other people. I might, chat around with my friends, but to get up and talk in front of other people or to think I was being recorded and, it was just like, that's just not going to happen. And my teacher I said, no, grandmother, I can't do that. I don't talk in front of people. And she just kind of gave me this look like, did I ask you? I was like, oh, snap, because I love her so much. I just had to say yes. And then the whole time I'm like, oh, nobody's going to come. And then when they come, I'm like, well, they're not going to like it. Well, when they liked it, it was like, oh no. And so but she got me to keep going. And the thing about it is, it's her point of view is that traditions are the foundation upon which we build. It's not just some static thing that has to be sacrosanct and we never deviate from. It's like a recipe. Like your grandmother may have the best recipe in the world, but maybe nowadays you wouldn't use 2 cups of sugar in that. You might use 1 cup of sugar or half a cup of sugar, based on the things we know about
sugar,
wellness and stuff. So, we're always adapting and adjusting. And so that was her point of view. And then also, which I adopted, but also that the medicine wheel itself, it's alive. It's alive and dynamically alive, and that you can, literally ask a question of the medicine wheel and receive a response. And I would go personally and ask, because, we would set up huge ones that 500 people could be around. And then I have my own personal one that I would set up on a little altar in my own home. And if I would be having one of those meltdown moments or a frustrating moment or, whatever, I could go to the medicine wheel and say, look, please help me, show me something here, because I'm kind of having a meltdown or something. And I would always receive a response. So, for instance, I had finally gotten myself into therapy because I mentioned dealing with some abuse issues from a childhood and abandonment and yada yada. Anyway, so I get in there and I have a great therapist, and we're getting through some important things. I'm being diligent with my work, and I'm feeling like, okay, yeah, I'm doing it, getting somewhere, and yay. And then after a little while, I'm walking down the street one day, and it was like, boom, it was all back with me. And I just went, oh my God, so I went beeline to my medicine wheel, and I said, you've got to show me something here, because I feel like I've just been, just whacked over. I want to give up if this is how it's going to be. I've been working so diligently. And then the medicine wheel showed me that, we see it on a one-dimensional plane as a flat thing. But they said you can also look at it this way and see it as a spiral. So where you're at right now and what you're working on right now, by the time you get back around to where you were, you're going to be at a different place with it. Is you're going to be beyond that. And so, yes, you're dealing with this again, but it's not from the same space that you were in before. And I went, oh, thank you.
So can you say a little bit more about that? Like because when you were in therapy, you were dealing with it in that moment, in that environment, in that mindset. Mm-hmm. How did it change when it came back around? Even though it was there, what was different about it, and how did you handle it from that perspective?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, I think even more than how did I deal with it or whatever, in those moments, it was the medicine wheel just reassuring me that I was still going along in a good way, and that I wasn't.
You weren't just going round and round and round.
Yeah, or that I was even going backwards. I mean, that was the thing, or that I was, I don't know, that I wasn't doing anything effective. But when I saw it from the perspective of, okay, this is from, I am working on it, and I don't quite see in this moment how it's different, but even being given that information, I can sense it in myself that, yes, it's different somehow. And so I continue to ask questions of the medicine wheel. And it wasn't so much that I was going, because it's kind of hard to say, but it's like if you go to, it's like when you use, say, like the Sri Yantra or one of those, mandalas, like from India, mm-hmm. You're looking outside of yourself at the center of this thing outside of yourself, but it's really assisting you to go back inside of you. Mm-hmm. So even though I'm talking about going to the medicine wheel and asking the medicine wheel, it was really about the medicine wheel helping me get back in touch with me and with the wisdom that resides within, and that, that we all have and comes from the universe. So basically this is a way of reconnecting with the universal wisdom within yourself, that we've all been trained to think, no, you're not that. I mean, I used to go, well, how come it was only like 5,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago that they had miracles, or that people could prophesy, or that people had visions? Like, well, what's with that? Because even Jesus said, when, the things that I do are nothing compared to what you're going to do when you remember who you really are.
Amazing, isn't it?
I know. So
somebody lied.
Say that again.
Somebody lied.
No, they wouldn't do that.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Yeah.
and going back to what you were talking earlier about the saints.
Yeah.
What the hell happened to St. Christopher? I never could figure it out.
Who is he?
Who is he?
Not Catholic. I don't know.
Oh, God. St. Christopher medals and all that?
Oh.
Remember?
Is he the patron saint of like cops or something? Or is that somebody else?
Something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Patron saint is fun, but then they took it away from him.
Oh.
You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, yeah. He was desainted.
Oh, I'm shocked.
I know.
Well,
Anyway, so let me ask you a follow-up question to what you just explained about where you were, and then you had that therapy experience, and then you had a different experience with seeing it from a different perspective in relation to the medicine wheel. Was it almost like, because I've been in therapy, and Janet, you've probably been in therapy, but I don't know, maybe not. You can speak for yourself. But when you're in that, and you're in that whole drama and that whole story about what took place, it's very real. Mm-hmm. It feels that way.
Yeah.
But when you saw it from a different perspective, and you went to the medicine wheel to ask, was it more of being the observer at that point? Or was it really, did it have that same charge and that same energy when you first experienced it when you were in therapy?
Right. Well, I was really fortunate because the therapist that I ended up with was very body-centered. And so after she got me to tell my story, and took 2 sessions, she said, no, take your time. So we got to go into a lot of detail. And And it was such a gift to have that, because it was the first time that I really spoke aloud all of these really crappy things that I've been holding inside for so long, and holding them as proof of my badness or wrongness, and just to have somebody compassionately and lovingly listen to that, and literally cry, just listening to what I went through, and acknowledge me for choosing to be not what you might expect, having gone through some of those things.
Sure.
She then proceeded to get me to be in my body and to get stuff out of my body. So, through physically moving and breath work and those sorts of things. So I didn't use like more of the medical model of
Okay.
psychotherapy. And it was like, if I would bring up an issue about the story, it was more of a jumping off point into something else, rather than going in and digging and, digging through the crap all the time. So she was a really great role model for me around that. And because I don't see continuing, and I've done a lot of work over the years, like especially with First Nations people and Aboriginal people up in Canada. There's this whole thing that many North Americans don't know. Both the Canadian and the United States government ripped Native children out of the arms of their families and stole them away and deposited them in these so-called schools, where they suffered just the separation. If you can imagine, even being 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, being torn away from your family and never knowing if you'd ever see them again. And then just mostly being treated horribly in a lot of different ways. So working with survivors of that and being with them, again, being able to witness someone as the first time they're telling their story. And I mean, just reach right in there and rip your heart out. I mean, it just it was just horrendous. And so for some people, they were able to tell the story and move beyond it. But other people had gotten caught up in the telling the story and telling the story and telling the story as a way of re-triggering that trauma and drama. And kind of, there's like an addiction to that. I appreciate
it becomes their identity.
Yes.
Because without that, they would have no identity, because they're so tied to that.
Well, and it's not just those people. It's like, people all over, just like so many things. But what I've seen is that when we're willing, so one of the analogies that I've used over the years is how, for instance, if we were all in the same room together, and then we went for a walk to go see the horse, and then we came back, and somebody snuck in while we were gone, and they left this huge, huge steaming pile of fresh horse poo right in the middle of the room. It would be like, oh my gosh, what is that? And what do we do with it? And I don't know. And it's really awful. And I didn't do it, and you didn't do it. And what do we do? And, but if we didn't take it out, or if we didn't know how to take it out, it would just sit there. And over time it would dry, and it would still be there, and then it would kind of like make dust particles, and would get all over everything and kind of be everywhere, and so how many of us have had this big pile of horse poo, as it were, dumped inside our space? And then we don't really know what to do. Like as a child, you just survive. You go along to get along, and you do what you can. Yep. And then hopefully you survive long enough to be able to become aware of what you can do to get that horse poop out onto the earth where it belongs. Because when you take it where it belongs, you can make compost with it and a beautiful garden. But otherwise, it just continues to stay in there and fester and ferment and create more dis-ease and more upset and block us from the beauty of what this life on this planet can truly be. Mm-hmm. So, I love to garden, and so I can get right in there with the horse poo, but I don't bring it in the house,
Great analogy.
Yeah.
So you use the medicine wheel in work that you do, but what other things do you do? And there's one specific thing that I'm pretty interested in hearing about, because we were talking before the show and reading it, and it's kind of how we met, is the whole access consciousness thing. And I'd really like to ask you to kind of give us, in this short amount of time, like a snapshot of what that is and the power of that.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for asking. So as I mentioned, I didn't say the date, but in 1980, I became a holistic health educator. So I've been at it for, a little while. And I love to learn. And that's the beauty of, I didn't allow my love of learning to get squashed by the school system itself. I didn't, it wasn't all great. It wasn't all bad, but, there was a lot in it that I really didn't like. But I love learning.
You were a Catholic school survivor.
Yes. Well, I saw somebody with a T-shirt that said that, and I went, "Oh, that's my shirt," Right. But I just love learning, and I'm just, whether it's gardening or cooking or whatever, and about holistic techniques and modalities. And so I was at an event just about 4 years ago called the Festival of Enlightenment. And there were a bunch of interesting facilitators there, including this gal, Rika Zimmerman. And she was just this sparkly little bundle of energy and joyfulness. And I, got connected with her because all of us who were facilitators, we have a private group and we stayed connected. And so I had my bar. So Access Consciousness has a whole ton of different modalities and tools and techniques to assist a person. And so I had my bars run, knocked my socks off. I had no idea what it was. And I felt my ear to the ground. I mean, I know about a lot of techniques and modalities, never heard of it, tried it. And I didn't really know what was different, but I could tell that something was different and changed. And it took a while till I could connect with somebody where I was visiting, to learn how to do the bars. And as soon as I did, I said, this is so good, I've got to learn how to teach it. But when on the way there, over the months between I had my first session and when I had my first training, I looked into it because I listened to a couple of calls that Rika was doing, and she was saying, talking kind of weird. And then there was this weird little word salad of these things like right, wrong, good and bad, pun, pock, all nine, shorts, boys, beyonds. And I'm like, what the hell is that?
Exactly.
And so I get online because I have to confess, I was in a little wee cult early on in my California days I was born in California, but by the time I migrated back there. And it was, it was a sweet little cult, but it was still a cult. And there was and it was a cult because it was follow the leader, whatever the guy said. You could tell because everybody was saying, oh, well, I'm going to go to the desert. Oh, he must have said it's time to go to the desert. Or, oh, don't wear red. Or, there were all these restrictions to be part of the group. And I was only in it for about 6 months, but it put my antenna up so that anything that I'm like, well, I don't know, this sounds really weird, I better look into it. But when I looked into it, what I recognized for myself was that Access uses questions to open up your capacity to be aware of the energy. So for instance, people say energy, well, what do you mean energy? And it's how many of you have ever hugged somebody and it was like hugging a brick wall?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, well, that's energy. And then there's somebody else and you hug and you just feel like you're just dissolving into this mush pile of puppy love oneness. And you're just like, you're never going to let go because it's so amazing. And so when in Access, we ask questions to be able to assist ourselves to know what we know, because we know stuff, but we've been trained here to not know. And
can I stop you right there just for a second?
You bet, yeah.
Because I know that back to the whole cult thing just for a second.
Yeah.
Because you talked about it and then you kind of jumped to the whole exciting part. But
I knew you were going to go for this one, Roger.
Oh, that's good. Let's go there.
No, because I think that there is this impression of that whole thing, and there's been accusations of that taking place, right?
Oh, yeah.
But in fact, it's one of those things where just because it appears to be something doesn't mean that it is.
Yeah.
But if you don't look beyond the surface, you're not going to pick it up.
Exactly.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like the founder has said he's not interested in having people follow him. Is that correct?
That's correct. He's like,
right.
Find somebody who's interested in that and go follow them, please. You know.
Are you talking about the founder of Access Consciousness,
Yeah,
Roger?
Gary Douglas.
Yeah, Gary M.
Okay.
Yeah, Gary M. Douglas. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's.
So I just wanted to make it clear that it isn't.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And thank you for that, because it's so not, and that's how come I could allow myself to get involved with it at all, because I'm so not interested. You know, been there, done that. I could get a T-shirt. I was in a cult, you know, and there were lovely people in it that with whom I'm still friends now. But just that scene was not, no, never again. Thank you very much. And so with Access, it's about empowering us to know what we know for ourselves. And so by asking questions and using a variety of other tools and techniques, we can unlock the things that have been, you know, the poo piles that we've got in our living rooms, and we can, you know, easily move them on and have shifts. And it's also similar to the medicine wheel, where it's a spiral. So you might be working on something and you feel like, oh, I broke through. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you people, but, you know, subsequent to my first time with this thing, I have had this moment where I felt like I really broke through, and it's all in my past, and then that's good, but then I'm moving along and there it is again, you know, but it's different. And then there's another thing within the medicine world, but I don't want to go into that right now. But with Access, it's about assisting people and not, you know, doing it for them or, you know, creating obligation. And Access has a lot of different points of view about healing and about, you know, teachers, or about all kinds of things. And one of the, you know, there's these 10 keys to Access. And one of them is, the first one is, would an infinite being truly choose this? So if I'm having an issue with something, you know, well, would an infinite being truly choose this? No, probably not. And well, then if an infinite being wouldn't, then why are you? Because we're infinite beings, and we have these cute little, you know, vehicles to cruise around the planet in. But that's not who all of what we truly are. And another one of the tools is everything is just an interesting point of view. So when I was doing my due diligence and research on Access Consciousness, I found a number of websites, and some of them were Christian-based, and some of them were just skeptic-based. But if, you know, these other interesting points of view about how bad Access was and how horrible, and oh, they say this and they say that, and it's really awful, and especially Christians, like, don't let anybody run your bars. That's like, you know, the path straight to you know, away from Jesus, you know, but I have a hunch. I mean, it's my interesting point of view that Jesus would actually like to have his bars run, you know. So.
Wait, let's stop. What do you mean by bars? What is that?
Oh,
I'm sorry if you guys talked about that when I had to leave, but
we covered it all already, and you just no.
I'm assuming you're not talking about the tossing of back.
Yeah, well, and also as a ballet dancer, you know, it's like we have the bar in the studio.
Yes,
right. So you have the ballet bar, and it's not just slugging back your shots at the bar downtown.
No tequila, yeah.
Yeah, although, you know, it's not forbidden. So it's the bars are actually 32 points on the head that you just lightly touch them. And what they do is they are releasing all of the built up, like, energetic flotsam and jetsam of all of your past thoughts, your judgments, your decisions, your conclusions, all of the ways that you tried to figure out this reality, or projections, your expectations, all of that sort of stuff. And one of the ways that I've thought about it is that if everything is energy, then in a particular way, as a way of looking at it, that thoughts can actually be things. And so, for instance, on your computer, when you delete a file, there's still like a little ghost of that in there. And so you have to do a disk defrag to really get it gone. And so basically, bars are like a disk defrag and a reboot, so that you can, and that was what I noticed after my very first session. It was just, there was all this space around me. And I kind of floated through the rest of the day, and it was just easy and happy and yummy. And you'd like to think, oh, you just need it once and then it's all good. But, there's that spiral, and we got, plus we're picking up,
I was going to say,
we're all psychic SpongeBob. So we pick up, stuff from each other.
Yeah.
And so, what if like the work that you personally are doing, whoever's watching this, like you're contributing to the better well-being of everybody on the planet, even though sometimes it doesn't look like it right now. But it's like when you're like, for instance, making soup stock, and you put all these clean vegetables in there and your water, but after a while this cruddy stuff kind of floats up, and you have to scoop it off, and then it's gone, but then it comes back, and so you scoop again, and you keep scooping until it really gets clarified. And one way of talking about it would be that we're kind of clarifying our stock here of the little soup of humanity, and each one of us has our part to play in clearing our ancestral stuff, and all of the things that we came in here to clear. Like we chose this, and all the times that I was just like, Scotty, beam me up, I want to get out of here. But truly, I had a moment where I had a vision, and I saw that I actually chose this. And so, because if I'm an infinite being, would being abandoned be a problem? I don't think so. If I'm an infinite being, would being physically and sexually abused be a problem? Not really, because I would know that it's just all part of this story that I chose to be involved in. And, and whether that's ultimately the most ultimate truth of reality, I don't know, like in the sense of, can I prove it to you right here and now? But it certainly gives me a lot more peace and space within myself to hold it that way, rather than holding it as like, they did me wrong and I'm not going to, let go until they're punished forever in hell or whatever, It's like,
why hold on to that story?
Yeah,
you could make space for some peace and tranquility and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So
when you're talking bars are only in the head, is that what you said?
That's
2 points.
Yep. There's
only in the head, Janet.
Yep.
Is that why people like their head massaged? I mean, there's the head is very sensitive.
Totally. Yeah. And there are other modalities, so a lot of times people, because, we tend to like to reference other things. So it's like this or it's like that. So sometimes people say, oh, it's just like cranial sacral work, or, oh, it's just like Reiki, or, oh, it's just like, whatever. And I'll say, it's very similar to, lots of different things, anywhere where you're touching the head, because you're touching the head, and it's a different point of view, just that I don't have to do anything. Like, I'm not trying to run a particular energetic thing through that person's head. I'm just touching it, like you'd hit the delete button on the computer, and then the computer knows what to do. So I'm touching these spots on the head, and the body knows, oh, that spot, yes, let's get rid of all of our points of view about sexuality and peace and joy and, those kinds of things. So it's, and to me, it's the gift that just keeps on giving. If I could have my bars run every day, and I'm asking the universe, what would that take? Some days I get it more and some days less, but. Well,
can you run them on yourself, or does that have to be done by someone else?
You can do it. And some of them it's not as easy to do, but in a pinch you can. It's and Gary's point of view, and he is the originator, his point of view is that on this planet, in this reality, these little bodies are not given enough yumminess, and they really love it. And so the more that we can touch each other, the better. But if you're in a pinch, definitely run your own bars. Like sometimes I'll just get in bed and I'll just put my hands on the implant band and which is one of them. I mean, they're all really amazing and useful, but to me, the implant band's kind of like a master bar in a sense. It just covers a lot of territory. So I'll run that for myself, or just we also start with these things called the energy pulls, and it's just asking the universal energy to flow through that person and kind of open up their channels to receiving. Because again, Gary's point of view is that we just don't receive very well here. So the more we can open up to receiving, the better.
Yeah. At least receiving the good stuff. I mean, I'm sure we're all masters at taking in the negativity around us at times, but.
Well, there's that, but I've found, and I don't know if it's true for you too, Janet, but often I found that even while I might be like unconsciously taking on, I'm equally resisting it too.
Yeah.
And so if I could just allow it to go and just go, oh, interesting point of view, they've got this thing going on. I don't have to hold on to it and make it significant. I can just be witnessing it and aware of it and allow it to be what it is.
Yeah, I find a really interesting correlation with this because I do human design astrology. And in human design, the head chakra, the top chakra or energy center, is where we take in inspiration and information from around us. And 50% or so of the population has a defined head, meaning they're broadcasting that energy out all the time. Mm-hmm. The other 50% of us have open heads, and so we're sort of absorbing the stuff from around us, amplifying it, and then sending it back out into the world. And it feels like sometimes then the open heads are open-headed people are bringing in things that aren't even genuinely their own, but they don't know the difference. So the story can get bigger and bigger, but they lose sight of where did this come from?
Yeah.
Is this even my story, or is this even something that I need to hold on to?
Right.
And so I'm seeing a really interesting correlation. What I guess I missed was, how does the bars relate to access consciousness now? Is there something that after you run the bars, or I think that's the word you used, run the bars, that then something else happens that heals that energy? Or
well, actually the bars is the first class that you would take if you're going to typically get involved with access at all. And although there's some little taster like intro things that you might do as well, but and so it's the gateway drug into access consciousness.
The part that brings you back for more.
No, yeah, because we laugh about it sometimes, but and it, for some people, it's just okay. I got relaxed. That was great. See you later, and that's the last time we'll ever see them, and they're just good. But it's like it's like a little key that opens up new possibilities, and so Gary really, his whole modus operandi, as I understand it, about access consciousness is that he wants to facilitate really, aware, awakened consciousness on the planet. Not the fact that, okay, my eyes are open, I'm conscious, but like really the awareness of how I, relate, and then related, my words, related to everything on the planet. And so the bars assist with that. And, but
I'll give you an example.
A person doesn't have to do anything more than that.
I'll give you an example. Actually, last year, Janet produced a radio show that I did once a week. And my co-host is the one that introduced this to me several years ago. And his ex-wife is now certified, I don't know what they call it, but she's like...
Certified facilitator, yeah.
She's taken every course there is, But what happened for me is that there was one day I probably I went to see Rika Zimmerman, go figure. And then there was a woman in San Diego that was doing bars trades every week, which is you can go and for $10 you work on each other, and for the evening. And it was probably about 4 or 5 weeks into this that I noticed one day I had no thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That tape that's always running, that voice that's always like chattering.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was gone.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was at first quite odd, because, that's how we operate. But then it was like, this is awesome because there is no mind chatter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, and then there was a car accident, and then
more stuff.
Whatever happens after that, But the point is that it took away that mind chatter.
Yeah.
And if that was all it did for me, then it was well worth it.
Yeah.
God, I'd say that's well worth it for anybody, because the mind chatter's, always there, ever present. For some people, they can't even shut it off.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Well, there's the bars is the first class, and then for me, I wanted to become a bars facilitator. So that meant that I had to take 3 bars classes, each one from a different facilitator, and then within a year take these 2 other classes. One's foundation, and then the next one is level 1. And typically take the foundation. So I took the bars class in a row. And by the end of those 3 days, a friend came to pick me up to take me to the train. And I'm sitting there just saying, oh my God, like I felt, because I'd been on a
we're having a little technical difficulty.
Retreat in the past, and you know what that's like, just sitting and you gotta. So I'd been to a Vipassana retreat in the past, and you're toughing it out, knowing that by the end you're going to feel happy about it, but in the first while it's really sucks. And but in 3 days of great, very much enjoyment, I had the same results of just no mind, as Roger was saying, and just feeling spacious and happy and joyful and excited about life. And I mean, I usually am, but even more. And just as an anecdote, my aunt, who's known me since I was 6 years old, we were hanging out together a couple summers ago, and she said, I've known you all this time. I've witnessed all your ups and downs and all the different things that you've done. And she said, and you've always seem to be progressing in your life. She said, but since you've done the access bars, you're really different, like very different. And I think the biggest thing was just the whole drop, like total dropping of my upset around any part of my upbringing and what, who did what and who didn't do what and all of those kinds of things. And so she was able to reflect back to me, yeah, I see something's really different from here. Now, another thing I've witnessed is that people, even in their first bars class, I've witnessed people because what you'll do is you pair up, and one person will give bars and to practice, and then the other one's receiving, and then you take a little break, and then the other person goes. And, people having huge changes in their bodies. For instance, this one gal, she gets up from her session and her very first bar session, and we're sitting, she had laid there for a while, and she came to join us. And it's very obvious that she's not paying one bit of attention to what we're saying. We're just kind of hanging out and having snacks. And finally she says, oh, I'm sorry, I haven't been paying attention. And I smiled and I said, I know, it's okay. And she goes, I'm smelling things. And I said, well, cool. That's great. She said, no, you don't understand. I had a major car accident and my nose got mangled, and I have not been able to smell anything for over 9 years.
That's amazing.
That's
crazy. And she didn't even say coming into class, well, I want to get my nose back. It just happened. Her body was willing to receive that then. And another gal who'd always had a very severe sway back, like her, how the little gymnasts land and they kind of throw their arms up and they stick their bum out, like her back was like that. And she had her very first bar session is practice in class. And she got up and she just went, oh. And I said, what, are you okay? And she said, yeah, my spine just adjusted myself and I don't have my sway back anymore. And when she went home that night, her partner was standing next to her after dinner and they were just hanging out on their balcony. And he said, whoa, what happened to you? And she said, what? And he said, your back, it's changed. And she said, yeah, that just happened in class today. So, you know, what's going to happen for you is what's going to happen for you. But I love the ease of it, because you can't do it wrong.
Yeah.
And you can get a lot better at it. So I've just witnessed, like, and little children can do it, and senior citizens, and just, you know, the whole gamut of people. And it just, it opens up so many more possibilities for people. So I'm endlessly excited about it, and the possibilities of what else can happen for me and everybody else. It just keeps growing.
Yeah, it sounds magical, actually. I love that, those little stories. So now tell us about your role as a holistic health educator. Is that partially teaching people how to do this bars or access consciousness, or is that something completely different?
Well, it's everything, you know. So, and I've been able to utilize it a lot in First Nations and Aboriginal communities, doing community development work, and so working with the band administrations and different agencies within the band government to assist them in coming together and reclaiming their ability to work together in a cohesive way. We had our ways and our structures in the old days before the government got involved, and then that all got exploded. And then this whole band and chief and council system got set up, which is totally antithetical to anything that our people ever did. But then this is the structure, and this is the way that people have to do it, but it doesn't work so well. So then coming in and guiding them and reclaiming their ability to do that in a way that really serves themselves and their people. And, you know, so I've done things like even just teaching like about natural foods, cooking with organic foods and things. I mean, because these folks just like, what do you do in a bulk food section in a health food store? Or, you know, because a lot of people, I mean, sadly, many of the reservations and reserves, they call them in Canada, are third world country conditions. Not all of them everywhere, but many of them are, or certain, you know, segments of the population are just really in dire straits and very much suffering. So being able to teach them how to eat in a healthy way that isn't too expensive, or how to move their bodies in a way that, it's not, I don't know, like Fitbox, or, I don't know, all of those different things, but it doesn't have to be crazy fitness. It's just
like PX90.
Yeah, PX90, that's the one.
Which I'm doing right now.
Good for you. It's just that, that's not for everybody. And so, like, how can you move, and how can you make your way of life be exercise, and how can you because that's how we lived in the old days. Our way of life was our exercise, and our people were fit, and there's this famous story about this one guy, I don't know, military man saying to this chief, "Oh, well, we'll move your people in these wagons, because it's a great long, and move them closer to something where they want to go." And the chief, because he said it's a far distance, to walk to go to this place. And the chief said, "We walk half that way just because we enjoy walking. It's not a big deal, you guys." So just a different point of view.
Yeah.
And so just, the label of Holistic Health Educator is, they chose that label as a way of opening up doors of possibility, so that anything that I'm interested in pretty much fits within that label. And so I've done a lot of counseling and coaching and mentoring and those sorts of things with that.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I really like that title.
Yeah.
or that, that little, it just means it really is open to being anything that you determine is holistic and healing.
Yes. Well, and also education. One of the things I learned in my Catholic schooling was about learning to look up the meanings of words, the etymologies. And the word education comes from the ancient Latin word educare, which wasn't, you're an empty little nothing and we'll pour all this important stuff in you, and then you'll get your diploma because you're full of all of the right stuff now. It was more, it actually means to lead forth or to draw out from, which presupposes that there's already something in there that we can invite to come out. And so it's a way of setting up a situation in which a person can, learn something, but also contribute what they already know, maybe from a different angle. So you see a lot of the young people, whether they're small children or young adults, coming up with some really fascinating new inventions. And they're not even, grown-up scientists yet, but they're just seeing the world in a different way, and they're being willing to explore that. And actually, the art of life. A lot of us got shut down in our elementary school years of, you're not an artist. There's one girl in the class who's the artist and the rest of you suck, basically. But we're all artists and we're all educators and we all have that capacity. And so it's, encouraging each other to bring it out. And so that's what I love doing.
Great. So as well as your role as an educator, are you also a personal practitioner? So you're also seeing clients or people on an individual basis?
I do that too, yes. And I don't always have a lot of time for doing that. So, people have to schedule in, pretty well in advance. But, and then I also like to, reach more people, so doing larger groups and things I really appreciate and enjoy. But, whatever works, I'm just excited about it all.
Wherever the work puts you, it's where you are, right?
Yeah, pretty much, and I do, like, for a while I was teaching ballet too, and so I got to work with the little tiny kids, the 3 and 4-year-olds, and all the way up to the, I even had some senior citizens in the adult classes and things, and I love that. It's just I travel around so much, it's kind of hard for me to, be able to just stay put in one place and do that anymore. But I miss hanging out with the little kiddos. So I'm just asking the universe, well, what would it take for me to get to play with some more little ones again?
Have your kids have kids? Then you have grandchildren.
Well, I do. Yeah. My grandson is going to be 2 years old in a few months here. So
I can't imagine he wants to do ballet, but
No, it doesn't have to be that, but it's just hanging out and playing. It's just fun. Yeah.
So if people wanted to get a hold of you or find out more about you, give us an idea of what your website is or how people could reach you.
Oh, sure. My website is called medicinewheelsandmore.com.
Medicine Wheels, more than one, right?
Yes. Wheels. Medicine Wheels and More.
And more.com.
And more.com. Right. So we're doing medicine wheels and we're doing a whole lot more. And as a matter, and it's been great because my next door neighbor, I taught her how to do bars, and she's got a background in doing a lot of, personal development and transformational work. So she and I are going to be doing some courses. She does a thing called Change Your Life, Change Your Story. Which is really exciting, which is developed by another mutual friend. And so then I'm going to also do an access body process in conjunction with that to make it even easier for people to drop their story, which is really exciting. And then my dear sister friend, Brooke Medicine Eagle, and I are going to do some courses over the summer. So that's really exciting as well.
Are you coming back to our part of the world?
Yes, I will be back over on the wet coast. Hopefully, it'll continue to be wet. When we had snow the other day, I was sending some good vibes over to you guys to have more.
We've had rain all week.
Yeah, snow and rain.
Nice.
Yay! And so I'll be back over there in Bellingham and probably Seattle and Carnation. There's a lovely place that I go in Carnation, and looking at doing some events over there as well. And then also I'm going to Machu Picchu for the June solstice this year with my brother, Heyoka Merrifield. He's been on a number of the Power Place tours in the past. And so we got invited to go and do a summer solstice or winter solstice for them down there, but a solstice ceremony for the solstice this year.
Nice.
So,
that'll be
very exciting. Yeah.
Have you ever been there before?
I haven't, but I met a Peruvian shaman about 4 years ago up at the International Indigenous Leadership Conference up in British Columbia, and he said, have you been to Peru yet? And I said, no. And so he handed me some tobacco from down there. And tobacco is it's considered the highest medicine, even more than ayahuasca or peyote or anything, because of the medicine that it conveys your prayers. And he handed me this tobacco and he said, you're coming to Peru. And I said, okay, thank you. I'll receive that.
Yay.
So yeah, so it looks like just took 4 years, but it's all good. Yeah.
It's only time.
It's only time, just we're traveling anyway, so it's all good.
Yeah. Very true. Very good.
Very true.
Roger, is there anything else you wanted to ask Susan before we close up for today?
No, I think I'm good for now. It's been a great interview.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's been great having you on, and I'm glad that you chose to do this and join us.
Well, I'm really glad that you were, felt inspired to invite me to come on, because it's just always great to offer these gifts to the world. A lot of people don't know about some of these things. And so, or maybe they've heard weird things about access, or they kind of had an idea somewhere, something about that circle medicine wheel thing, but, just to get a little bit more.
Or even Catholic school.
Or Catholic school, yes. Well, there's always that,
Takeaway message today: hierarchies suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and maybe also just that, you are the gift, and we chose to come here to be this gift, and each one of us has many gifts within us. And so what would it take? Here's the invitation. What would it take for you and me and all of us to just unpack these gifts and really offer them to the world? Because, it'd be kind of suck to be taking the last breath in that body and go, oh, snap, I could have been really having a lot more fun.
I shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, let's not end up like that. Let's have more fun now.
No, I agree. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Susan, thank you so much for joining us today on Empower You TV. We have enjoyed your presence, your wisdom, and I'm really fascinated by Access Consciousness now. I have to check this out.
Oh, good.
Find out more about it. And Roger, thanks for, as always, being my guest host here. And for everybody listening to us today, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions that you have of Susan, you can reach her at www.medicinewheelsandmore.com. And if you want to find out more about programming, you can find us, empowerutv.org. Thank you all, and take care.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Roger.
Bye, Susan. Bye, Roger.
Bye, guys.